Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Lookout live stream. Coming to you from Chico, California. Today we're going to look at fire behavior on the Shelly Fire, the Hill Fire, new fires in the Pacific Northwest. So thanks for joining us. Just got a couple things to start here on the computer, and then we'll get started with the live stream. All right, it's working. Over the winter, morning, Bob. Over the winter, they changed around the software I use, so still figuring out like how to see things when I come on. Okay, so jumping right in, there's quite a few fires burning in the Pacific Northwest. We're going to talk about those. The Shelly Fire is kind of done unless we get extreme weather, and the Hill Fire is kind of taking off and has quite a bit of activity on it right now, but also is somewhat limited by geography. So if you're just joining us, Lookout live streams about fire and how it behaves and how we fight them. I've been working in fire mapping for about 25 years and all over Northern California and the West Coast. So this is kind of a master class in large fire management. So glad you're all here with us, and we're going to jump kind of right into the maps. This is a map that we like to use a lot, the California Fire History Map. And I'm a map maker, so these are my tools. We use data from public sources and kind of from my own collection to curate this little tour for you. So here, let's orient ourselves. We're looking at the Hill Fire here, and this is Redding, and this is Arcata, and up here is the Shelly Fire. So I said I'd talk about Shelly first. So the reason we start off with this large fire history is because oftentimes fire history is what kind of determines the potential a fire has to really grow large. Fires like the Dixie Fire grew large in areas that had not a lot of recent fire history. If you look at the Dixie here, that burned from, down in Feather River Canyon all the way up to Lassen Park and all the way over to the escarpment of the east side of the Sierra. There's a lot of areas out in here that have no other color besides the blue of the Dixie because they haven't burned in the last 100 years. So up here where we're looking at the Shelly Fire, you can see that off to the west, there's been a lot of fire out there in the Klamath. There's some places in the Klamath that have burned 7 times in the last 100 years. So to Shelly itself, white line is yesterday's perimeter, red line is last night's. And you can see there's hardly anywhere here where you don't have white line. And when you have a white line on the edge here, it basically means that the fire didn't spread since yesterday. And in some places, the lines don't match up just because people with different level of attention to detail digitized it. Night before last, they didn't get the perimeter till something like 2 or 3 in the morning. So the person digitizing it had to hurry. All right, so sometimes you see like there's a growth of 85 acres. That could mean that there was a growth of 60 acres and 25 of that's just digitizing discrepancy because someone was in a hurry and someone else wasn't. So anyway, on Shelly, over the weekend, the fire kind of made a run up out of Patterson Creek here. It had been backing down the hill. The yellow here is scattered heat. And I'll turn off the fire history just so it doesn't confuse us as much. So they're mapping scattered heat kind of all over Shelly, but the heat satellites aren't even really seeing any heat along the edges because there's really not a lot of fresh heat in this fire. So the fire ran up out of Patterson, crossed over this ridge. At that time, I told y'all I thought it would keep going down the hill, and we'd fight it at the bottom unless we got rained on, and then we got rained on. So that was great timing. This flank's cold, or coldish. There's still a little bit of heat in the fire on the north side of Whiskey Butte. So if you're looking kind of north over Etna, here's Etna. There's a little bit of heat on the north side of Whiskey Butte. And there's a little bit of heat still out in the wilderness portions of the fire on the the west side of the PCT. But other than that, a lot of this is really cooling down. I also thought early in this fire that it could burn all this area out in here. I was wrong on that too. It did slop over, and CAL FIRE and the Forest Service hit it very hard. They were very aggressive in working this ridge between Mill Creek and Kidder Creek, and they there's a little bit of heat here in Upper Mill Creek that's showing new from yesterday. One thing that was kind of good timing on this fire, as far as them getting in here, was we often get inversions that pack a lot of smoke in on our fires in the Klamath, and that limits the use of aircraft, helicopters, and retardant bombers. And they were able to work this flank of the fire pretty heavily with helicopters. And they also used night dropping helicopters, which people on the ground said made a big difference. So aviation made a big difference, but also crews got out on the ground and dealt with a lot of this. There was also kind of worry that the fire would spread up Kidder Creek, and this was a difficult place for them to go direct. You can see, anytime you see like a rock slide or avalanche corridor, that tells you that it's going to be very difficult ground to work on. Think of Mount Huff in Indian Valley in Plumas County, other places like that. Like, this is telling you that this is some really steep country, if you couldn't tell from the animation. Anyway, they kind of tied it in here into this big kind of rock outcrop. And so all in all, Shelly's looking pretty done. So great efforts there. Okay, so we're going to jump out from Shelly, and we're going to go over here. We're going to fly south down the Highway 96 to the Hillfire. Hillfire really took off in a big way the day before yesterday. And let me see if I can cue up a little video of that. Don't have it. All right. Well, take my word for it. A lot of you saw that on the webcams. Actually, I think I put it on Twitter. Let me see if I can find that. All right. I know that a lot of folks don't like Twitter, don't like Elon Musk, but I still use Twitter. It's a good way to get info from me. That it's a good real-time reporting tool for me. So if you can get over your hatred of Elon Musk and all those other things, follow us on Twitter at WildlandsEco. CKO. This is the Hillfire day before yesterday, and it really made a run, and it burned about 2,000 or 3,000 acres in this time period. So started by lightning, kind of low on the slope, and it was able to kind of run the whole drainage, and it created a good what we call pyrocumulus, punched up a big what we call ice cap. When when there's all the moisture being released by the fire, burning green trees goes up, and we call it an ice cap because it gets up into the upper atmosphere, and those ice crystals make the white cap on it. But that's usually telling you that a fire is really raging, right? A lot of us just call this a column. Fire weather people call this a pyrocumulonimbus, but or pyrocumulus cloud. Anyway, so what you're seeing there is what we refer to as alignment. So let's see, let's bring up perimeter here as mapped by NIROPS. Got some infrared here from the National Interagency Fire Center. Infrared operations, so NIROPS. So Hill, it started down in here, and that big fire cloud we saw was the fire running this drainage, right? So it, in that course of that afternoon, day before yesterday, it ran this whole drainage, and it threw some spots way out. I've seen some stuff that says that this fire is threatening Willow Creek, and I'd say that's not super accurate. Here's Willow Creek up here, about 15 miles away, maybe 10. Miles away. I say it's not much of a threat to Willow Creek because if you were watching the live streams here 2 years ago, we reported on these fires around Willow Creek, and so this entire purple area burned 2 years ago. And so we do prescribed fires and to remove the surface fuels and to clean up the understory and to like kill small trees. And this fire was a lightning fire also, and it largely burned under inversions of smoke and was low fire severity, but it burned this entire area. So you can see that the fire is spotted out into here, but a lot of this fire basically on its big run, it got to the ridge that they held the last fire on, and it basically stopped. So it is growing in here, but it's not raging. It's not growing fast, and I'd be surprised if it moves very fast through this area. We have kind of an interesting image here that is, let's see if we can pull it up. Here's an image of what that fire looked like after the fire, and it's a little hard to intuit what's going on here, but green basically means there's still a forest canopy, and red means that it's burned hot and just black sticks. So that was one thing that was interesting about these fires that burned in Willow Creek area in 2022 was that there was a lot of underburning. There's still a lot of dead trees over there. There's places that were green after the fire that have died since, but the majority of the fire, like this whole area, burned in 2022. And you can see there's just some hot spots and a lot of underburn. So anyway, since this whole area burned basically with a prescribed fire type of intensity in 2022, I don't expect the Hill fire to really run hard towards Willow Creek. Another thing we see in this country is that fires burn to the nearest major ridge, and then they are controlled. So bring up our fire history here. You can see this is the 2008 Hell's Half fire that burned in the South Fork Trinity. It burned to the ridge and was contained. The lightning fires we had over here in 2015 were contained on major ridges. Basically what happens, you've got roads on ridges, or you could put in dozer line, and then you can do firing operations in this country. And so we already see on this fire on Hill that they've done a firing operation here along this road. So whenever you see kind of a road and a string of fire like this, it means that this got lit last night. Let's see, when was this flowing? They don't say what time it was flowing. I can find that out. So here's a ops map of the hill fire. They've got dozer line along the summit, the Berry Summit Mad River Road. And then they fired off of that dozer line and road, and that's what you see in here. They've also got dozer line around the top here. There's some spot fires out past that. So these dozer along the road made it wider, fired it. It held as of the time that this was flowing. This had held. Earlier perimeter mapping showed it slopped over here, but there's no heat out there, so that might just be a mapping error. So I would expect, looks like they went direct out here with dozers. They might do more firing off of this, but it's probably going to be hard for them to get firing to carry very well in an area that just got burned 2 years ago, if it's not, if the weather conditions stay not extreme. I'm not right on top of the weather right now, but I can show a little spread on this fire too, where they flew this fire yesterday with the state plane, and they mapped it out here, and it had spread a bit, but it's also not showing a lot of heat now. So keep an eye on how, it'll be interesting to see, there's a lot of talk about how soon an area can reburn after it's been burned in different fuel types. And so it'll be interesting to see what fire behavior we get in this 2-year-old burn. Another thing to watch out for on hill is just there is some active heat as the fire backs down into the riparian area here. And this is Mosquito Creek. And then it runs up pretty steep slope here to the divide between the South Fork Trinity and Mosquito Creek. So, and often fire is really hard to fight in riparian areas. There's all these kind of log jams, and you can't use retardant right up against streams, and there's a ton of vegetation. And riparian areas can burn deceptively hot. You go out there and you're next to the creek, and it feels really not flammable. And but riparian areas, under the right conditions, can really rip. So if the fire does cross the creek here, what we saw on the fires in 2022 was the fires back down into these creeks. They were hard to control, and then they'd make another slope-driven run. So there's definitely potential on this fire, since there's so much active heat along the riparian and no roads right down in there for them to fight fire, that this fire could cross over the creek here, Mosquito Creek, and make slope-driven runs up towards this 2008 fire. And it's been long enough since 2008 that this area is ready to burn again. If the fire does run up out of here and spots into here, it's a difficult country to fight fire in, which is one reason that this 2008 fire got so large. It's also called Hell's Half Acre, which is tells you something about like how difficult it is. Like that probably is named by someone who had a real difficult time trying to work out there 150 years ago. Anyway, hill's got potential to burn this way. It's got kind of limited potential to spread to the west, I'd say, just because they're going to be able to fire off this ridge, probably keep pace with the fire. It's very likely that the fire's not going to blast out to the west unless we get some extraordinary weather. And like I said, I'm not super praised on the forecast. It'll be going for a while. I would say one thing about if the fire does get up and burn down into Hell's Half Acre, traditionally, fires have burned in California every 5 to 15 years anyway. So to get fire back into this 16-year-old burn scar is ecologically natural and not going to be the end of the world. But it will be a lot of work for firefighters. All right. So that's there's not a lot else going on in Northern California. There's been some lightning fires burning over by Little Valley. If you know where Little Valley is, you are in a very select group of people. And if you're from Little Valley, I'm sorry, but I'm from Westwood, and we're like sister cities, right? Little Valley, the horse fire here, I don't have a primer for that. Let me look real quick. I don't think that anyone ever made one that I can get a hold of. I know my least favorite thing is watching someone else drive a computer, but I don't have any like hold music or cute videos to play while I look for something. Yeah, no mapping out there of the horse. All right. Well, the next thing to talk about is the Pacific Northwest. Someone says, I do live in California mountains. Okay. Someone wants to be interviewed in the South Puget Sound area of Washington to talk about biomass logging, where they make biochar from the waste wood. That sounds good. While we're in Little Valley here, not far from New Beaver, there's a biomass, like a wood pellet facility proposed here for New Beaver, because it's kind of industrial land right on the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, and it's a spot where they could take biomass from forest thinning and load it on trains and take it down to the Port of Stockton down here from New Beaver. National enviro groups are up in arms about this. There's a lot of people that don't like biomass as biomass energy, and for a variety of reasons, and we'll talk about that more. But I got to say, having a way to get rid of excess forest biomass is a good thing. Sorry I didn't have the map on there. If you want to see New Beaver, there's New Beaver. It's kind of between Aden and Fall River Mills, or Redding and Alturas, depending on your familiarity. Okay, so we're going to jump here up into Oregon, and I want to talk a little bit about graphics, and just a little nerd out here. Like, you see, there's fires all over Oregon, all these little red things here. And if you look at Watch Duty, and this is not a dig on Watch Duty at all, Watch Duty's awesome, but here's Watch Duty's map of the Pacific Northwest. And so I've been making maps for my entire adult life, and there's this challenge of being a cartographer, of how you work with symbolizing things in a way that isn't misleading. And so if you look at the Watch Duty map, the size of their icons, it makes it look like the entire state's on fire. And like I said, not a dig at Watch Duty, just a note on kind of cartography and the challenge of how do you symbolize things in a way that is usable for someone on their phone or on their computer. You know, Watch Duty is very usable. It's extremely well designed interface, but graphically it makes it look like the entire state's on fire. And so if you look at, and the same with here, like I've got my Google Earth, and it's showing all the fire locations. But if I just turn on the actual heat of where fires are, and the thing with Watch Duty is they're calling in the same data that I'm using here that shows every fire that's reported to the National Fire Center. But if you actually turn on just the heat, suddenly there's not really that much going on. There's a bunch of small fires started by lightning. There's a bunch of fires that are out and not making heat, and there's a few pretty big fires out on the east side here. So, like I said, not a dig at Watch Duty, but just a note on kind of cartography and how you have this kind of conflict between usability of a map and visual portrayal of what's actually happening. Okay, someone says, lightning was crazy this week in Oregon. Thanks for addressing this area in the mapping. Noticed lots of fire, but showing rapidly out. Okay, so I want to jump real quick to weather. So here's an animation of the last 5 days. And I was in San Bernardino on Saturday, so that's when this starts. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and now. So when I was in San Bernardino, we had buildup in the mountains there, and then there was a bunch of lightning. And you can see the lightning here as kind of the bright blue and white dots. And you can see it come across Oregon past couple of days. And these bands of black are clouds. And so where the big picture is here, if you look down here in Arizona, you see that a couple big kind of buildups of clouds. Like so here on Sunday, it's a big buildup of moisture down here. And then you can kind of see it move up. And then here's a front moving through, and it sucks in that monsoonal moisture. So if you just kind of sit back and watch, you can see the monsoonal moisture streaming up from the Pacific Southwest. Into Oregon, and that's what causes lightning. So when we have big summer lightning storms, it's usually because we have a storm front that sucks moisture up from the monsoonal moisture that's happening down here in Arizona. So that's here's that lightning moving through, and then now we've got all these new starts. Also what happened is that front moved through, it really blew out some of the fires that have been burning for like a week or more in eastern Oregon. So I'm just going to kind of move up from around Medford. One thing we see around Medford is there's no heat showing on the fire that was burning out between White City and Klamath Falls, so that's a good thing. So we've got some smallish fires out west of Crater Lake, and then kind of the biggest one right here is right near Diamond Lake. I don't have any perimeters for these fires yet other than the heat satellite. But this fire made a pretty decent run yesterday, and it's going to be threatening likely kind of infrastructure, campgrounds, and people's places along Diamond Lake. Let me pull up some structures here. So there's a bit going on. There's not a ton of people out there, but there are some structures around Diamond Lake. And this is one, this is Mount Thielsen. So this is one of the bigger fires burning right now in Oregon, in the western side of Oregon. Some bigger fires in the northwest, or in the eastern Oregon. So let's see, coming out, we got Crescent Lake and a couple small fires, some small fires up here around Crescent Lake, Diamond Peak. And as you go over the summit here to Oak Ridge, there's a little bit of heat showing north of Oak Ridge. As of this mapping, there wasn't a lot going on with these fires. And I know there's a lot of kind of trauma from the 2020 fires. And we don't see that kind of explosive fire growth that we had in 2020 during July and August usually. Come September, Labor Day, we get these big east wind events, but we don't usually have the big east winds that drive the big fires. Let me see if I can pull up the 2020 fires from Oregon. That's not it. I'm going to play this on loop for a second while I look for something for you guys. I wanted to show the Oregon fires from 2020. Looks like you probably have to do that tomorrow. There we go. All right. Yeah, so this satellite imagery here is kind of the severity maps of the big fires that burned in Oregon in 2020, where we had really high severity. These were the Labor Day fires, and they were fires that started with high winds and blew hard to the west. And so I know that a lot of times we see a lot of fire on the ground in Oregon. We get worried that we're going to have another episode of these big catastrophic fires, like this one up here. And I mix up the names, but these were generational fires. What I wanted to say though is just that this time of year we don't really have the winds necessarily to drive that kind of fire behavior, and so it's concerning to see a lot of fires start just because it's going to commit a lot of resources, and a lot of these are going to burn for a long time. But for right now, we're not going to have these things grow explosively, is my opinion. They'll run with the terrain and they'll run with the wind, but they're not going to make 30-mile runs west right in the near future. They might be a problem. Some of these might be a problem a month from now, but in the immediate future, a lot of these fires start on upper slopes, and they don't have a lot of room to run up the mountain. Or if they do run the mountain, then they have to back down other slopes. Up here, north of McKenzie Bridge, got a fire here that is burning kind of up in north of the H.J. Andrews Experimental Forest. I think a lot of this burned in that's outside of what burned in 2022. This was the Holiday Farm fire. There's a little bit going on up here in the middle Santiam River. Looks like maybe in the wilderness. All right, so a lot of small scattered lightning fires. We'll watch that over the next few days. The bigger story in Oregon is that, say out here around Burns, is this fire's been burning for over a week, and with that frontal passage that brought the lightning in, it also brought in strong winds, and this fire is 65,000 acres or more. I mean, this area here is 65,000. So the fire itself is I'm not sure how far down it came here, but that shape I just drew, including this heat down here, is over 150,000 acres. So we had probably over 50 square miles of fire growth on this yesterday. And so this is kind of on its way to becoming a mega fire, and it's got a lot of contiguous fuel out ahead of it. There's a lot of thinning that's been done here. You can see the thinning really shows up on imagery. This is, unthinned versus thinned. So it'll be interesting to see if thinned areas burned any less severely. What we saw during the Dixie Fire was that didn't happen. A lot of thinned areas with the extreme weather just were crown fires also. So what's this fire called, people? The Falls Fire. Start over here. Started on the 10th, so it's been burning for 8 days. Human caused. So we'll keep watching that one, and then up here, kind of between, so northwest of John Dave, got the Lone Rock Fire. This fire made an interesting run yesterday, where it looks like it ran hard. It had more of a north wind, and this ran. Sorry for the spastic map driving here. This fire made a pretty big run yesterday. Ran about 7 miles. So as far as some kind of local landmarks here, it's burning north of Service Creek and Spray. There's other kind of fires along this corridor here on the 395 corridor between Nye and John Day. The Snake Fire out here grew quite a bit yesterday. So the fires didn't get, it's not a lot of fire showing on, there's a lot of fires that have been put out, but not a lot going on up in Washington. We've got the Pioneer Fire up in Washington that's been burning for a while in a remote area where it sounds like they don't expect to contain that anytime soon. Pioneer started on, it's been burning for over a month. And fires out here on Lake Chelan, a lot of them just grow until it rains. Anyway, I'll answer some questions. Give me a second here. Someone says, are they just letting them burn? Someone says, I've lived in California all my life. What's up with all these fires? Well, I would say as a person that tracks this stuff, there's not a lot going on in California. And then I come down here and like, what's that? That must be old. There we go. Yeah, I got to turn off the fires from 2020 if I want. Yeah, I mean, when I look at what's going on in California right now, for being as hot and dry as it is, it's kind of like a lull for us. We've been busy. The company I manage is helping mapping on the Hill Fire and the Shelly Fire. We just went down to Southern Cal, but there's not, all in all, considering the years we've had in the past and the conditions we've had recently, things are pretty mellow right now in California. Nothing really extraordinary, just some lightning starts, some man-made fires. But given the heat we've had, it's surprising to me that we don't have more going on. So they're not just letting them burn. But right now we're at what's called planning level 4, planning level 5. It means that there's a lot of fires going on and we're starting to get tapped out on resources. So some fires that are way out in the middle of nowhere will get let to burn because they're going to save the resources for places closer to humanity. Right now, in general, compared to, say, 20 years ago, we're letting less fires burn than we used to. There's a real fear in fire managers that if you let a fire burn in July, that in August or September, you're going to get another Beachy Creek or Holiday Farm or Bear Fire. And no one really wants that on their resume. But the problem with that is that we're going to have fires like that one way or another. And a lot of these big fires, it doesn't matter if we throw a lot of resources at them, they're going to burn until it rains anyway. So at some point, it's out of our control. But there's still the responsibility of people that have to make these decisions. And it can still get pinned on an individual. And until we kind of move past that, we're going to have fire on the landscape one way or another. And but for now, as long as it comes down to one person's head, one line officer, one forest supervisor, taking the heat for fire conditions that are based on 100 years of fire suppression and sick forests, we're going to continue to see people deciding to put out every fire, which is not going to, in the long run, help us have healthier forests. Anyway, I got to go to work, folks. We're busy, and then going down to SoCal over the weekend took it out of me. We were on the road for 3 days, and they turned us around when we got there. So a lot of a lot of energy goes. There's a lot of wasted energy when it comes to firefighting too. Thanks, folks.